I am just going through the different aspects of US hegemony. So first one, hegemony as hard power. Here it denotes the military dominance of US. So US is the most powerful country. Militarily it is the most powerful country and its military dominance is both absolute and relative. So how it is absolute? If any country attack on US, the attacking country can be easily crippled by the US and US can shield its own forces from ruin. Then militarily US is so strong and it can reach any point accurately, lethally and in time. So it can make complete destruction of the attacking country. It can reach the destination very easily. So how this military dominance of US is relative, how its relative aspect works. So militarily there is no match for US, okay, and its dominance is based on higher military expenditure. So it is based on higher military expenditure. So if we compare the next 12 powerful nations, the military expenditure of 12 powerful nations, it is less than that of the US. It is less than that of the US. So the military expenditure of the US is so huge. If we compare this amount with the amount of 12 next 12 powerful nations of the world, it is less than that of the US. And Pentagon, the Defense Department headquarters of US, spent much for the research and development works. So the US military is so technologically advanced. So we can say that the US military is the topmost one in the world, both in quantity and quality. But still there are some vulnerabilities or there are some weaknesses for the US. So it can easily occupy an area because it is militarily advanced and very powerful, the most powerful country in the world. But the US is weak in policing an occupied territory. They are weak. The US is weak in maintaining law and order in their occupied area, occupied territory. And we can see this in the case of Iraq, that Iraqi example. After occupying that region, after installing a US friendly government, the US didn't get the support of the people in Iraq. So next topic or next aspect, hegemony as structural power. So first one about the military dominance, here the economic domination of the US. So here the focus is towards the economic domination of the US. So a dominant power has to support the creation and existence of an open world economy. You all know that today is the period of globalization and it is the period of open world economy. So in an open world economy, to control all things, a dominant power is essential, especially for the creation and existence of this open world economy. Then the hegemon power or the dominant power here, the US, must possess the ability and desire to establish certain norms for order and must sustain the global structure. So, who is sustaining this global structure? The US, or here the hegemon power, US. So, openness of the world economy helps. Today, this openness of the world economy helps. How it helps? So, whatever is done for the benefit of the hegemon power, whatever is done for the benefit of the US, it can be utilized by other states. So, here we can study the example of the role of US in providing global public goods. So many goods or many public goods are created by the US, and these goods are utilized by all the countries of the world. So public goods, before describing the global public goods, we already studied about this public goods. Public goods are those goods that can be consumed by one person without reducing the amount of goods available for someone else. And here we studied two examples, fresh air and public roads. So global public goods are those goods which can be used by the whole world, but in the hands of the hegemon power. Its control will be in the hands of the hegemon power. So every country in the world can utilize these goods. For example, sea lanes of communication, internet, etc. Then we already studied about the sea lanes of communication. These are the trade routes used by the merchant ships or trade ships. Okay, so the naval power of the hegemon power underwrites the law of the sea. So who makes all these laws? Who makes the laws for these sea lanes of communication? The naval power of the hegemon power. So here the naval power of the hegemon power, here the US Navy is multi-oceanic. They have naval bases in different oceans. Okay, so the US Navy gives freedom of navigation to other countries in international waters. So who gives freedom of navigation in international waters for other countries? The US Naval Force. Then the next global public good, internet. So it is developed by US military in 1950, and nowadays also we are utilizing this internet through the global network of satellites, and these satellites are, most of the satellites are the products of the US. So the US providing global public goods all over the world in the form of internet, sea lanes of communication, etc. So US dominates in all parts of the world, in all sectors of the world economy, in all areas of technology, and its share in the world economy is 28%. So in some texts it is given as 24%, it is 28%. So in intra-European Union trade, the US share is 14%. Intra-European Union trade means trade among the members of the European Union. So in all sectors of world economy, an American firm can come in the top 3 lists. So after the Second World War, most of the countries lost its financial position. So it became necessary to rebuild the international economic system. Lending money became essential after the Second World War. So under the leadership of the UN, a conference was held, and Bretton Woods conference in America. So in this meeting or in this conference, several institutions were started, and IMF, World Bank, International Monetary Fund, then World Bank, World Trade Organization, all these were formed as a result of this Bretton Woods conference. So these are also the products of American economic hegemony. Still, during nowadays also, these institutions provide financial help to many countries of the world. And we already mentioned that the course of MBA, or the concept of business as a profession, came from the US. It first started in Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania in 1881. Then first MBA course started in 1900. Outside US, the first MBA course started in 1950. Then I was explaining about hegemony as soft power. So we are coming to the last aspect of hegemony as soft power. So America dominates in the social, political, cultural and ideological spheres also. Thoughts, dreams and lifestyle of many people in different parts of the world are very much Americanized. Even in food, we are imitating the Americans. Okay, so the dominant power has ideological resources to shape the behavior of lesser powers, and I already mentioned that example. Nearly half of the world population watches Hollywood movies. So the capacity to manufacture consent. So what is the manufacture consent? The behavior of the weaker countries is influenced by the powerful countries. Even their standard of living, attire, everything is influenced by the powerful countries. So we are the people in the lesser developed countries or weaker countries. They are always trying to imitate the culture of the West, mainly the culture of the hegemon power. So the ability, it is the ability to persuade rather than coerce. So I already told that there is no compulsion. Okay, the US is not compelling us to follow their culture, follow their dress, follow their food, etc. So it is the ability to persuade rather than coerce, no compulsion here. And everyone follows the cultural presence of the US. Today everyone follows the cultural presence of the US. So disintegration, the imitation of that capitalist economy or the US culture can be shown in the formation of capitalist countries after the disintegration of USSR. So you already studied about end of bipolarity. So there you studied that when the USSR disintegrated in 1991, many new nations were formed, and these new nations, mainly their economic system was capitalist system. So there was great attraction towards, in most of these communist countries, the people were greatly attracted towards the capitalist system of the US. So we can say that the 20th century culture is the US culture. Okay, 20th century culture is the US culture. Then I am going to, so I covered an important topic that is the different aspects of hegemony. So from this portion questions can be asked separately. Sometimes it can be asked to describe hegemony, US hegemony as a hard power, then second structural power, then soft power, and it can be asked for 8 marks in total. Okay, as an essay question it can be asked. Then you have to cover all these things. Then I am going to the next topic, constraints on American hegemony. So who puts constraints or limits to the American hegemony? Actually these constraints come from, or these constraints lie within the US, come from their own country. These constraints come. So institutional architecture. So first constraint comes from the institutional architecture of America. So the administrative system or the government, the organs of government, the branches, 3 different branches of government. There is division of power among the 3 branches of government, and this structure, this institutional structure of US sometimes put limits on the unrestrained and immoderate powers, military powers exercised by the executive. So who exercises unrestrained and immoderate powers on the military? The executive. The executive exercises unrestrained and immoderate military powers. So these unrestrained powers or immoderate powers can be limited by the other branches of the government. So the institutional architecture of American state puts limits on its hegemony. Then the second constraint comes from the open nature of American society. So every action of the government is criticized by the public. So they openly criticize the government. Media can be used for this criticism. So for every action the government is vigilant, because they will be criticized. The government will be criticized by the public or media. So open nature of American society also put constraints on the US hegemony. So the third constraint comes from NATO. So NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, this NATO has the power to moderate the exercise of US hegemony. Actually, US has interest in this organization. It is under the leadership of US, and US is interested in the alliance of democracies of this NATO. So that follow the market economies alive. So this NATO helps to keep alive these market economies, the market economies of the member states of this NATO. So these allies are able to moderate the US hegemony. So the first constraint comes from the US institutional architecture. So what are the constraints on American hegemony? It is not coming from outside. The first 2 constraints come from America itself. So the first constraint is the institutional structure or institutional architecture of the US, mainly the system of division of power between the three branches of American government. So these branches can control the unrestrained and immoderate powers, military powers exercised by the American executive. Then second constraint comes from the open nature of American society. Every action of the government is viewed with skepticism or viewed with doubts. So the government is also vigilant towards this public response. So second constraint comes from the open nature of American society. The government is always vigilant towards the criticism of the people and media. Then the third constraint comes from NATO. The US is interested to maintain the alliance of countries in the NATO. So these allies are able to moderate this US hegemony. So I am going to take the next topic, India's relationship with the US. So in the chapter End of Bipolarity, you already studied about India's relations with the USSR. So during the time of Cold War, there is a friendly relation towards USSR. India had friendly relations towards USSR, but after the disintegration of USSR in 1991, India became friendless in the international politics. So during the time of Cold War, India was slanted towards USSR, but after the disintegration of USSR, India became friendless. So in 1990s, India became ready to change its economic policies. The policy of liberalization started in India. So when India changed its economic policies, or when India moved towards liberalization, many attractive economic partners were there, including US. Or after changing the economic policy of India, we could maintain a good relation with the US. It became an attractive economic partner. And recently, two new factors emerged in Indo-US relations. So the first factor relates to the technological dimension, and the second factor relates to the role of the Indian American diaspora. Diaspora means the migrants. Okay. So these two factors are interrelated. So two new factors emerged in Indo-US relations. The first factor relates to the technological dimension. Second factor relates to the role of the Indian American diaspora. So how these two factors are interrelated? US absorbs about 65% of India's total software exports. So of India's total software exports, who occupies its 65%? The US. Then 35% of technical staff of Boeing is of Indian origin. Then 3 lakh Indians are working in Silicon Valley, San Francisco. Then 15% of all high-tech startups are by Indian Americans. So how these two factors are interrelated, the technological dimension and the Indo-American diaspora. First point, US absorbs about 65% of India's total software exports. Second, 35% of technical staff of Boeing is of Indian origin. 3 lakh Indians are working in Silicon Valley. And last one, 15% of all high-tech startups are by Indian Americans. So, what will be the relationship between India and the US? So, there are many debates and discussions in our country, and here we have to study 3 views of Indian political analysts regarding the relationship between the US and India. So, 3 possible strategies are suggested by Indian political analysts to deal with the US. First one, first group of Indian analysts, they are fearful, or they are fear of the closeness of India and the US. They have no interest in the close relationship between India and the US. Then this group of Indian analysts suggests that we have to maintain aloofness from the US, or we have to keep distance from the US and increase comprehensive national power. We have to do something to increase our own influence. They are not interested in the close relationship between India and the US. Then historic opportunity for India. So there is a growing convergence of interests. Sometimes the US and India have similar interests. So there is convergence of interests. So according to this group of political analysts, we have to make use of this convergence of interest. So we have to make use of this situation, and we have to maintain good ties with the US. And according to this group of political scientists, if India opposes US in any matter, it will hurt, or it will make harms to our own country. So the third group of political analysts suggests, they are suggesting to form a coalition of developing countries, and this coalition will be under the leadership of US. So if this coalition is powerful, we can challenge the US hegemony. So according to the third group of political analysts, first we have to form a coalition of developing countries, or the countries with similar interests. We have to form a coalition and strengthen that coalition, or if that coalition is powerful, this coalition can challenge the US, and it will be under the leadership of India. So India's relationship with the US, what was the relationship of India with the US at the time of Cold War? During the time of Cold War, India was slanted towards USSR, or if we compare both these superpowers of the time during Cold War, US and USSR, India has some interest in USSR. but after the disintegration of USSR, India became friendless, and India began to change its economic policies, or they began to follow the liberalization policy in 1990s. Then the US became an attractive partner of India. So recently, two new factors emerged in Indo-US relations. Two new factors, and these two factors, first factor relate to the technological dimension, then the second factor relate to the role of the Indian American diaspora. Diaspora means migrants, okay, and these two factors are interrelated. So how these two factors become interrelated? First point, US absorbs about 65% of India's total software exports. 35% of technical staff of Boeing is of Indian origin. Then 3 lakh Indians are working in Silicon Valley, San Francisco. Then last point, 15% of all high-tech startups are by Indian Americans. So there are different opinions regarding the relationship between India and the US. How can we maintain a good relationship with India and the US? So 3 possible strategies are suggested by Indian political analysts. First group of Indian analysts are fearful towards the closeness or close relationship between India and the US. So they prefer to maintain distance or aloofness from the US and increase comprehensive national power. Or India, according to this group of analysts, political analysts, we have to increase our own influence. Then second group of political analysts suggests that it is a historic opportunity because there are similar interests between India and the US. So there is convergence of interests, similar interests. So we have to utilize this occasion. We have to utilize this time to maintain good ties with the US. So according to this group of political analysts, if India oppose US, it will hurt in the long run, or it will affect India's relations in the international politics. So the third group of political analysts suggests that a coalition should be formed, and this coalition should be of developing countries. So if this coalition is powerful, we can challenge, through this coalition we can challenge the hegemony of US. So the last topic, how can hegemony be overcome, will be taken next class. So if you have any doubt, you can come to that politics vacation class group. Okay, today I am going to wind up. Okay, bye.